What's up, everybody? It's your boy Eugene Williams Jr. out here today, and it's another edition of Talk to Me with Eugene Williams Jr. I always have great guests, and once again, this particular guest is no exception. I met this woman, it's got to be over 15 years ago now. It's got to be a long time ago now. And let me tell you about why our relationship even happened. Years ago, when I was an assistant principal at Orange County High School, the superintendent in that county, in Orange County in Virginia, the superintendent in that county gathered all of the admins together and said, we have a situation where our Black male students aren't achieving at the same rate as our other students. And it was my wife, who was the principal of the elementary school at the time, that asked him, well, what are we going to do about it? We're talking about it, but what are we going to do about it? And so a task force was put together, made primarily of the gifted and talented people in central office and mostly of the African-American administrators in the county. And we came across this woman, and she came to our system and consulted with us and helped us and built us up and had some professional developments with our teachers. And she came in hot, y'all. Folks know what needed to be known and left no stone unturned. But let me tell you about her. She is a distinguished professor of education and human ecology in the College of Education and Human Ecology at The Ohio State University. She's a faculty affiliate with the Kirwan Institute and the Center for Latin American Studies. She's in the Department of Educational Studies and the Special Education Department. She was at Vanderbilt for 15 years and held 2 endowed chairs there, 2. She was also a professor of special education at The Ohio State University, an associate professor of educational psychology at University of Virginia, and assistant professor at the University of Kentucky. She earned her PhD in urban education, her master's in education counseling, and her bachelor's of arts in communications and Spanish. She conducts research primarily in gifted education and culturally responsive multicultural urban education. Specifically, her work focuses on the achievement gap, recruiting and retaining culturally different students in gifted education, multicultural curriculum and instruction, culturally competent teacher training and development, African-American identity, and African-American family involvement. Now, I could go through the list of all the places that she's spoken and all the publications she's written for, but you don't have time because we're talking about hundreds, nay, thousands of publications and places, okay? But I want you, if you are an educator who's interested in equity, or you're an educator in general who cares about kids, to pay special attention to this particular broadcast, because this woman is a woman that I respect. I've admired from afar ever since I first met her, and she has had a resounding influence on me and my career since the time that I met her. Let's give her a soul-trained Don Cornelius welcome. Put your hands together and give it all up for Dr. Donna Y. Ford. Hey!
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was wonderful. I appreciate
Dr.
you.
Ford, thank you for coming on the show. You're one of those guests that I told my wife, I said, if I can get Dr. Donna Ford on the show, I'm doing it. Because I know she's busy. I know she's doing things. And so it's an honor for me to have you here. I want to get right into it. You, whether you know it or not, and you probably do know it. And let me tell you before we start, Dr. Ford doesn't mince any words. So if you're sensitive, change the channel. You, whether you know it or not, I think you do know this, you are a social justice warrior for African-American students, Latin American students, but males in particular. And when we met, you came to help my particular district together a program that was going to increase the enrollment of African-American males in AP honors, advanced classes. But not only that, the goal was to create a structure, a support system to help them not just survive in those classes, but to thrive in those classes.
Yes.
And so, my first question to you is what were your earliest influences with regards to this path that you've taken? What made Dr. Ford decide, or what made a young educator, Donna Ford, decide that I want to make sure that students of color have opportunities to grow and flourish in places and in systems where they weren't always, well, their best interests weren't always at heart or taken care of? What made you decide to do that?
Well, first of all, I just can't even answer that question until I say thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I have a high regard and respect for you and your wife. Thank you so much for inviting me. All
No
right.
problem.
So, with that said, my work is personal as well as professional, and so I go by Dr. Ford and I go by Donna from Cleveland. So when I say personal, I'm talking about Donna from Cleveland, and I just got to keep it real.
Yeah.
So I became passionate about. I'm going to call it GATE, Gifted and Talented Education. Okay. I became passionate, I should say, about GATE based on being in gifted and talented programs, and in particular, going to a private school when I was a 10th grader and having the most horrific, traumatic experience ever. And I went from being on a full scholarship, it was an ABC, a Better Chance Scholarship,
Right.
and went into that program loving who I was as a Black person and believing I was so smart, I could do anything I wanted to if I put my mind and my effort to it. And I had worked, I had earned my way into that private school. And one teacher in particular, I'm sorry, but especially, it was actually all of them, but one in particular, she tore me up. Every time I submitted an assignment, she just gave me poor grades, and I was always isolated in the school. I was always accused of being a theft like Donna. And listen to this. It would be over the intercom. Donna Ford, XYZ, has a bracelet missing, is missing some jewelry. Come to the office. And I'm one of the few Black students, and I'm low income because it's a wealthy school, private school, all girls school. And I would take that walk down that hall, and it was just humiliating. And then I just got to be blunt, to hate who the hell I was. I hated being poor. I was upset with my mother because we were poor. I started to hate being Black. I entered that school loving being Black. I even started hating being Black. And I said, I don't ever want a child to experience this again. So that was as a 10th grader. Right. Then, trying to be brief, I ended up having my son, and when I turned 18, and I worked hard as hell to make sure he was advanced. I did the things my mother did, and that was I was speaking in complete sentence to him. I was making sure he was reading. I was reading to him and more. Yeah. And so I remember when wanting him to enter kindergarten early. So early entrance into kindergarten, radical acceleration. And this white psychologist gave him a test, which I knew nothing about because I'm 18. I wasn't working in gifted education, GATE yet, right. No less on my doctoral degree or even a master's at that time. So it was a white psychologist. I didn't know what to ask her. I just know, hey, she's in all Black schools, a white psychologist. I hope she knows what the hell she's doing with these Black kids. Yeah. So, but when she told me they were going to take a test, it was going to be a couple of hours. When he came back, I could see tears in his eyes. And I said, what happened? She said, well, you worked very hard with him, but, and I said, here we go. She said, but he's culturally No, I'm sorry. She said he's socially incompetent, and I was about to whoop her ass. You can bleep that.
Incompetent?
Socially incompetent.
How
I
about the
said,
term? Okay, go ahead.
right. I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, he doesn't know what a pastor is. And she's talking about grass, not a preacher. And I said, ain't no damn grass in East Cleveland. Ain't no pastor in East Cleveland. So why the hell would I be talking to him about cows and stuff? And then she said, she said, he called this item and a plug. And she's talking about an electrical outlet. And I said, well, we tell him put the plug in the plug. So she said, well, that's not right. So that's, another sign that he's not ready. I said, because he doesn't know that you call that an outlet and because we
Right.
call it a plug.
Right.
And it was a few more examples. And so then after I was fussing with her and telling her all that I had done with my son, I mean, I was on welfare and I was buying these games called Speak and Spell and Speak and Tell.
I remember all
You
those
remember
games.
those?
Yeah.
Oh man, I was buying those things, and I mean that meant we were gonna skip a meal, right? But I was
Yes.
trying to do everything I could for my son to
Yes.
make sure he was advanced. So she said, "Well, I can tell you've worked hard with him, and I'm gonna tell you this." She said, "I'll give you the choice. You can put him in school late when he's supposed to be, and he's going to be the top student." I'm like, right on. She
Okay.
said, but if you put him in school now, she said, he's going to be the lowest performing students. Now you tell me, which would you choose? So I ended up putting him in school early, and I'm a shorten. I ended up putting him in school early. I said, I'm going to choose that because I know he's ready.
Okay.
And he was so the teachers had such low expectations that they didn't challenge him, even though he was in there early. But it was not until maybe second grade that he finally got identified as gifted and talented.
All right.
But by then, Eugene, he was talking about dropping out of school. I'm like, what in the? I've never heard of a second grader in my life talking about dropping out of school. High school,
No.
yeah. I've done all of this work and y'all have just undone this in what? Kindergarten first and second grade. 3 years, you've undone everything I've ever done with my son. And I said, right, I cannot have this. So I became a gifted underachiever briefly. He became, talking about a gifted underachiever. So then I said, I got to do my dissertation on this. And that was my dissertation, Gifted Black Students Who Underachieve, why. And then I based my first book on that. And I'm telling you, my son was born in 1979, and I've been fighting for Black boys and girls ever since, but especially our boys, because they are discriminated against the most. They are the most demonized and more. And you know this.
I
I'm
do.
saying, damn,
I'm
that's 1979 and this is 2025 and I'm fighting for the same stuff.
I'm grateful because, number one, you reminded me of some of the things that my mother used to talk about when I was a baby. No, there was no goo goo gaga. It was all complete sentences when you talk to them. You expose them to reading materials,
Yes.
the right television shows, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just am so amazed that you have the foresight as a teenage mother to know that the child needed these things and to put these things in action. There are parents who are 24, 25, 30, and 35 who don't know to do that. And so that alone was a miracle in and of itself. And so also as a former private school student myself, who knows what it's like to be the only Black person in the classroom or the only Black person in a particular class, and being told that, you work at subpar when you know that it isn't, or being put to the back of the class because you only do book reports on Black people and Black authors, and those articles are disregarded. I can feel exactly where you're coming from. And so we're so glad that you are placed on this earth for our young Black boys, Black and brown boys, to help them get to where they need to be. So now we move on to that. You talked about that experience, which is so pivotal in terms of who you have become. What have been the drawbacks and or the positives of being this social justice warrior that defends the educational rights and needs and privileges of Black and brown students, boys in particular?
Yeah. Well, with my work, I honestly have to say that there's not been many drawbacks because I can back up what I'm saying. So I can share lived experiences. I can create vignettes that are really authentic, but I can back it up also. If it's not with my research, it will be the research of others. Well, not either or, but both. So I've not had really that many drawbacks.
Okay.
However, I know that other people have. Now, with that said, there will be pushback because you are um, admitting that racism exists. And I have to say this: I'm not a big fan of implicit racism, where we're like, oh, well, it was unconscious and they didn't really know what they were saying.
Right.
Hell no. I think most of it is explicit.
Okay.
And so I call people out on that. You knew what you were doing when you did not refer Black boys for GATE, Black boys for AP honors, and any other advanced opportunities, because the numbers say that it's beyond statistical chance that underrepresentation should be so severe. So, for example, depending on what year you're looking at from the Office for Civil Rights Data Collection, Black students are like either 19 or 17% of the schools, but let's go with 19. And then they end up being 10% of gifted programs. So we're talking about almost 50%. And then when we're 17% of public schools nationally, we're talking about all public schools, we end up being like 8%. And
Okay.
then, which again ends up being around 50%. And then most of those students, between Black boys and Black girls, the majority who do not have access to GATE, advanced classes, are the boys. But people sure as hell know how to find Black boys for special education. They damn sure know how to find them for discipline, but you cannot find the gifts and talents, the promise and potential in our Black boys, and that is problematic. And I will not be silent. I will not be silenced. And so my entire career, I have been Dr. Ford and Donna from Cleveland and telling it like it is. And if I am Donna from Cleveland and I'm as blunt as I can possibly be, and I submit it to a mainstream journal and you don't accept it, that's why we got damn Black journals, because I'm going to publish it somewhere. Okay?
And I know you will, because what I know about you is that you meet these issues head on. And I'm reflecting back to the time when you came to the county where I was working at the time. I was assistant principal. And I and my Black male administrative colleagues in that same county, we immediately took to you, and I think you to us, because we saw a person that was who we were waiting for. Sometimes when you are an administrator or a teacher, especially a Black one, in a predominantly white district, there are some things that I shamefully admit that you feel like sometimes you have to go along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you step out of that and do something that you know is right for a particular group of students, sometimes they paint a negative picture of you.
Yeah, they do.
As if you're not a team player, or as if you don't have all the students' interests at heart. And so when we saw you come into our midst and decide to help us create a program that was going to help us identify Black and brown male students who were doing well in school and who should be referred to the AP honors and advanced classes, and who weren't being referred, and how to support them, we were so very excited. Folks, I want to tell you about this great program. We took a bunch of kids to the University of Virginia, and Dr. Ford and Stanford Amos and several of Dr. Ford's associates came down with us, and it was a 2-week boot camp, if you will, on teaching these young men the importance of knowing who they are racially, who they are spiritually, emotionally, academically, and using that to their advantage and helping other people understand that as well. And it was the first time that I, as an educator, I felt I had the freedom to really talk to young men who grew up like I did and let them know these, and you can do anything is possible, but
You are
these are the
somebody.
barriers. You're somebody, number one, and these are the barriers that will be placed in your path, and this is the way you get through them or around them.
Yes, around them.
And so, as we were going through that program, and as you were counseling me and helping me be a better educator, be a better teacher, to all students in general, but to Black male students in particular, I want to know, what about if you recall that experience,
Mm-hmm.
and what about that experience resonated with you? What stuck with you from that time?
Well, let me correct you. It wasn't about you being a better teacher because you were a great teacher. Okay.
Thank you.
It was just giving you some more resources and strategies and things like that. All right. So, and it was wonderful working with you, but it was I mean, I just cannot forget the experience with the boys. Okay. So what resonated with me was seeing, what was it, 50 to 75, might have been 100, but 50 to
75. You're right, 75. Right.
okay, seeing 75 Black boys from several age groups who had the agency and believed in themselves, and some were doing well, some were not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then even if some were doing well, some were still having some behavioral challenges.
Sure.
Okay. Now I'm talking about authentic, not,
Right.
Ones that were biased based on deficit thinking.
Sure.
Okay. So, so deficit thinking is, the less we know about Black boys, the more we damn make up. Okay, so this was about working with them, and it's like the more you know about them, or the more we know about ourselves, the less is made up. All right, so which I call dynamic thinking. But I just remember just seeing so much potential in that room, and even tearing up a few times. And in only 2 weeks, we were able to get these Black boys to have more academic agency or academic self-efficacy.
Yes.
We were able to get them to understand why acting out in school was not going to help them, because some of them were, not all.
True.
And we were able to get them to like be more complimentary toward each other.
Yes, we were. Yes.
I mean, and
Yes.
to help each other more. And I'm
Yes,
talking about
yes.
help each other more, like simple things like, we walking back from lunch and the door slams almost, and teaching you, oh, grab that door and say, oh, I got this for you.
Yes.
We were able to teach them that it was okay to touch each other. That was
Yes.
not being, I don't like to use the words, but
Right. It was
do,
not being effeminate. It was just being a caring person.
There you go.
That's right.
That's a better, yeah, you said it. That it's okay. It was okay to touch each other.
Yes.
And then they were caring for each other. If one was acting up, they're like, don't do that. Don't do that. You should not. Remember what we were taught. And so within a matter of 2 weeks, we unbrainwashed them in the most positive ways. And they ended up, the outcome, but if not all, but the majority ended up doing everything we wanted them to do academically, and so on.
Doc, let me tell you, first of all, once again, that is absolutely the same thing I remember. And I remember being side by side with you and my fellow colleagues and just beaming with pride because of it. But we shared about this earlier before we came on the air. I want to let you know again that all of those young men, especially that first set of young men, all went to 4-year institutions. They were all accepted.
See?
Now,
there you go.
I left the system several years after that, so I don't know if they all finished, but I know that
they got there.
There was a young man who got his degree in biology, bioengineering from Virginia Tech. I know there was a young man that went to Longwood University. He's a major player there. I know that one of the earlier participants, like I told you earlier, went to Harvard on a scholarship. So I know that even in whether it be small, rural, predominantly white counties or big, urban, predominantly black and brown counties, black and brown students, both male and female, of course, but
Yeah,
where I was, the girls were already doing it for themselves.
doing it for themselves for the most part.
So
Yeah.
it was already happening with the girls. But I know that in any system, if given the right training, and here's my advertising for the work of Dr. Ford and her former partner, Dr. Gilman Whiting. My advertising for you guys is, folks, if you are a superintendent, if you are a principal, and you can get these people or their associates in your building, you need to do that, especially if you're truly interested in getting black and brown male students to where they need to be academically, socially, emotionally, and every other positive way.
Psychologically, yes.
Yes, psychologically especially, because they can make it happen, and they can make it happen in short order. If
2 weeks we did this.
2 weeks, but that's only if all of the administrators and
Yes.
teachers and central office people that are involved are of the same mindset, and on the same page.
Yes.
Because so many times, folks get in their feelings, and with all due respect, my white colleagues, we love you, but sometimes y'all get in your feelings when it comes to the performance of black students, and you don't want to hear what we, as former black students and current black educators, have to tell you about that, because we know firsthand experience, both as a student and as a teacher. So if you can get out of your
no,
feelings,
we're not talking about this based on just studies and just things like that. No, we're talking about we do studies, but we're talking about this. We have lived this. We are trying to raise our sons, our grandsons, our great grandsons, but not that's just relative. But we want this for all children, and because it's our lived experiences, our true stories, etc. We know how to tell you how to do it. And you know what? There's a saying which says, if you don't admire diversity, or if you don't respect diversity, diversity won't respect you. So you have to really want this for children. Why did you go into education? It's to do no harm. To do no harm. It's beneficence, to really help children. So you're not there to just help some children. You're supposed to be there to help all children. You're not even supposed to be there just to advocate for black girls. It's for black boys. It's for all children. But the most marginalized, I don't care how you say it, are black boys. And we don't just say this because, I'm black and because you black.
No, we know.
There's a litany of data that supports what we're saying. And so therefore, we want you to not just be an ally. We just don't want you to be an accomplice. We want you to be a co-conspirator. And that also means giving up some of your white privilege and doing what you are supposed to do as a professional. Why did you go into education? Do no harm.
Yes, you know what? And Dr. Ford, that is the most important message you can give today. Now, here's the thing, Dr. Ford. My show is a half an hour. So when we're having a good conversation like this with good people who care about people, the time creeps up on you very, very suddenly.
It does.
And so I don't be surprised if I get back with you in the near future and maybe have a part 2 or part 3 to this, because there's so much that we could talk about. I also want to remind people, I'm going to give you a little tidbit. I need you to Google Donna Ford, Gilman Whiting, and the 9 constructs of a scholar. That's what I need you to Google if you are an educator who is concerned with the improvement in performance and behavior of black and brown male students. Just Google these terms: Donna Y. Ford, Gilman Whiting, and the 9 constructs of a scholar. You'll get those 9 constructs, which I won't go into now. Maybe that's me for show number 2. Yeah. And it'll give you all the tools, or a majority of the tools that you need to set you on the right path, to set these young fellas on the right path. You know what? I've been blessed this morning. You blessed me, Dr. Ford.
Likewise.
I'm grateful to you. I'm getting a little emotional now because I remember the conversations we used to have, you know, in the lunch times and after the program was over and before the program. And we talked about so many things that weren't just about education, just about, you know, being Black educators who are interested in the success of all children.
Yeah. Yes.
And what people don't understand is that, and I'm going to say this to America, and I know Dr. Ford will agree. Hey, America, when Black boys do well, America does better.
Period.
When Black people are achieving and thriving and growing, all of America does better.
Well, period.
So this has been Talk to Me with Eugene Williams Jr. with the blunt, the fantastic, the wonderful, the social justice warrior and educator that everybody needs to know if they don't know already, Dr. Donna Ford. And I bid you a good evening. Be blessed.